And so his Cybernetics core is slightly later, which means his warp gate technology is going to be slightly later, which is a good thing for us. So we're going to go back, resume the replay, and at 17, about 17 to 18 supply, we're going to start our first combat unit, our first attacking unit out of the gateway, which is the Zealot. Now, Zealot costs 2 supply compared to the Probe being 1 supply, so we're going to have to build pylons eventually. We're going to have to build more pylons eventually anyway. So we're going to build our first unit, the Zealot. The Zealot is a melee unit, which means it fights at close quarters like you would with a sword. It doesn't have a gun or anything, nothing fancy. Um, it's a very buff unit. It's very strong. It takes a while to kill it, but it's not ranged. And ranged units in this game are very held very highly because ranged units are just better because you just attack, run away, and you don't have to worry about anything pretty much. But a Zealot, we're going to need the Zealot for this push because it's very strong and it does really good damage. It's just that you have to be able to micro it, which means you have to be able to move it yourself around in order for it to do that damage that it does so well. So at 17, we're going to say at 18 supply just to be safe so you don't cut probes or anything. 18 supply, Zealot out of your gateway. Hit play, and throughout all this, you are making probes. Throughout all this, you don't want to start probe production unless you want to get your gateway down or you want to get your Cybernetics core down. That's the only time you cut probes. That's why I'm going off the supply, not the actual time. This way, you know you have enough units to do this timing. And so we're starting to build up some minerals, which is good because when we start up minerals, that means we're going to throw down our extra buildings. And for this build, it's okay to float money, the mineral part, until you get your gateways down. Since the Cybernetics core is done, we're going to start Warp Gate technology, which is right here. It says Warp Gate technology, and this is where our chrono boost, because we haven't been chronoing our probes as much, because we could have more probes. We could have about 2 to 3 more. If we use our Chrono Boost on our Nexus, but we saved it up so we can get Warp Gate technology faster. And so that's what we saved it up for. So we're starting Warp Gate right away, and we're gonna go back to our notepad. And we're gonna say when Cybernet is done, Cyber is done, start Warp Gate, and then put all of Chrono into Warp Gate. So from now on, we're going to put all of our Chrono into Warp Gate. Now, Chrono does not stack, and so what you want is you want to Chrono boost the Warp Gate technology one at a time. As soon as 20 seconds end, you Chrono it again, and once the 20 seconds end again, you Chrono it again. Because stacking, it doesn't stack, so chronoing it twice when in between the 20 seconds is going to be more of a waste and it's inefficient. And so with this, we have 22 supply. Now we're at 24 because we actually started a Stalker. Now a Stalker is an armored unit that is a ranged unit. Now it costs gas, and so this is why I said this is what the Cybernetics core unlocked and this is what gas unlocked. It's an armored unit that is an anti-air, anti-ground unit that's anti-armored. It's an anti-armor unit. It's being armored, anti-armor. It's kind of confusing a little bit, but it's a fast unit that does additional damage versus armor units, and it's a ranged unit. And so it's a very good unit to use in a fight. And so for this, we got the Stalker, and we're at 24 supply. Now, usually we might build a pylon, but we're going to save our money to build our gateways first. This way that, we get our production up, and then we get the unsupply block later. But we're still chronoing this out. We're still building probes, but when I talked about before having 16 workers on the mineral line, that's all we're going to have. So this is our last probe that we're building. So after this, don't build any more probes because in order to do this and have the units that you need to do this build, you can't make any more probes until after the execution of it. And so we're at 24 out of 26. We chrono boosted the Cybernetics core. The Stalker is on the way. It is rallied, which is this line. Rallied means is that's where once the unit comes out of the building, that's where it's going to go. And so, as you can see by the line, it's going over there. We see another chrono boost on the Warp Gate technology, and so it's going faster. Now right here at 24 supply, when we have the money, which a gateway costs 150 minerals. And so basically, in order to get, and it's called a 4 gate because you build 4 gateways. We already have 1 gateway, so we're going to need 3, which means we're going to have around 450 minerals in order to do this. And so you can wait about till 350 to 400 to start building your gateways, because by the time your probe gets to the spot that you want to build your gateways, and by the time it's building your gateways, you're going to have enough to build all 3. Now, remember that scouting probe that we had earlier, which is way over here. See, this is the base that we saw. A scouting probe's right here. Now this probe is very important because it's going to build something called a proxy pylon, which is a pylon. Again, remember the pylon is a power field that allows you to warp in units from your warp gate to the pylon. And so what we're going to, and the proxy pylon means is that it's somewhere far away. It's not where it's supposed to be, which means it's going to be on his side of the map, and it's going to allow us to get our units to his base so much faster because of the warp gate technology. Um, and so we got our gateways building at 24. So at 24 supply, when we have the money, 24 supply, build 3 gateways. Oh, we should actually say we have to build the stalker at 22 supply. Forgot to write that down. But that's one thing we still have to do after we have to keep making probes after the at this point, this is when we stop making probes actually. So at 22 supply, we can actually say don't make probes anymore. So stop making probes at 22. Stop making probes. Also at 22. Stalker. And then at 24, 3 gateways. Now, you don't have to wait until you have the 450 minerals to build the 3 gateways, but it's so much nicer so that you can transform them into warp gates all at the same time instead of waiting little by little to transform one at a time. It feels really good to do it all at the same time, and it makes it more simple. You don't have to worry about it as much. You have to worry about one not transforming, one it is. So it makes it a lot more flowing game. So we got our gateways building. We got 3 right now. And here comes our 4th one right there. Now, we have our probe over here. We have our units over here. Now, as soon as we have 125 minerals and 50 gas, which is how much a stalker costs, a zealot costs 100 gas. Not 100 gas, 100 minerals. So like I said, it's not a very high-tech unit because it doesn't require any gas. Units that cost gas are higher tech. But since we have the 125 minerals, we're going to build a second stalker. So at 24 supply, a stalker. We have to build a stalker. And what we're going to do with this one is that we're going to rally it to the zealot or the stalker. This way, when it pops out, when it comes out, it will go straight to the other units. So that way, your unit or your army will be grouped up, and so you won't be waiting back at home. It'll be on its way to your opponent's base already because that's where your units already are. So we're just going to be waiting here. We're still putting all our chrono into our warp gate technology so that it finishes faster. Now, about this time, you want to start your proxy pylon. So at 26 supply, you want to build your proxy pylon. And you want to kind of build it on his side of the map, and this is a safe pylon. It's called a safe pylon because it's supposed to be where it's outside your opponent's base, and it's going to be a little out of the way so your opponent doesn't seize it and doesn't kill it right away. Because without this, you have to warp back all the way back here because this is where the pylons are, and walk all the way across this big map to get to his base, and by that time he'll be prepared to stop your push. And so that's why you have to have this, and this is called a safe pylon because it's out of the way, and hopefully you're going to get your units up no matter what using this pylon, most likely, unless he's really good with his map awareness and his scouting with his other units. And so our units are on the way across the map. Like I said, the stalker is actually really fast. Being an armored unit, it's faster than the zealot, so it's going to get there a little bit faster. And so with our probe, we're going to try to build, like the point of this is we're going to try to build pylons in his base so that like our units will be right in his face when we can actually warp them in. And that way they'll be faster to the battlefield. So at this time, you see the probe, and like, all right, I want to try to kill that probe, but he's got a stalker of his own, and he got the first shot off, which means that my stalker will die if I continue fighting that stalker. And so, but the second stalker has come out, and on his way. He's rallied towards the zealot or the stock. He's rallied toward over here so that he will come in the fight whenever as soon as possible when he walks over. Um, a warp gate technology is seconds away. It's 5 seconds away from being done. And as you can see by these silhouettes, is that this probe has queued up to build pylons in the opponent's base so that when warp gate is done and the pylons are up, we can warp in straight into his base in order to begin our attack and our assault right in his face so that he's more pressured and most likely he will lose because he doesn't have the production that we have. So the Stalker backs away because it's going to lose if it continues the fight. But now with the Zealot here, the Zealot does really good damage, and combined with the Stalker, that Stalker doesn't stand a chance even though it got the first shots off on the other Stalker, because with the combined damage of the Stalker and the Zealot, the Stalker cannot survive. So the Stalker is running. And back at home, Warp Gate research is done. So we're transforming our 4 gateways into the Warp Gate that we need. So when Warp Gate research is done, I'm going to abbreviate WGR for Warp Gate Research. We're going to morph gateways. Alright. Also, we did forget to put the 26 proxy pylon, or pylons, that way we can build more than one most of the time. So at this point, warp gates are almost done, and we're trying to make it where we don't lose these units at the beginning. We got his Stalker. That was great. Great deal. We got the Stalker. So that means there's one less unit that he has than us. And so the warp gates are almost done. They got like 0.1 second away. Some of them do. And so we're going to wait, and we see the first warp in. First warp in, any units that you warp in, it doesn't matter. It's on preference. But again, ranged units are always better most of the time, and so we warp in 4 Stalkers instead of Zealots because we have the gas, we have the minerals to do so. And so this way, our army is a little bit more mobile and a little bit more powerful and potent. With that, we're going to have these Stalkers come up into the base and start fighting. As you can see, probes have been being pulled up the line because there's not enough units to deal with our rush. And so the pylons in his base are finishing. That way, our next warp in, we can actually warp in units into his base. Now, every single time you warp in, there's a cooldown for the warp gates, because otherwise you could just keep having units pop out, and that'd be kind of unfair. So there's an actual cooldown after each teleport, pretty much. That's what you warp in. It's basically you teleport your units there. So after each warp in, there's a cooldown, and the cooldown is about 25 seconds. And so we're killing probes now, which is good because that means him pulling probes off the line, off the mineral line, means that he's not getting as much income as we are. It means that he's in trouble, so that our rush is working, and also we're killing them, so that his economy is not going to be as good either. Because if he does hold this push off, we're going to have a better economy, so we're going to be able to make more units, make more tech than he is, because we don't have to reproduce our economy because our economy is already set. And from here on out, it is just a micro battle with your units. You micro the units around so that you can have the most damage and so they don't die. A next warp in cycle should be coming up right about now. So we got our gateway selected, and our next warp in is happening right now. We get warp in 1 Stalker and 3 Zealots. This is because we don't have enough gas to warp in any more Stalkers, and plus Zealots are pretty good against probes. Zealots do more damage than the Stalkers straight up, but again, they're not ranged. See, a Zealot does 2 attacks of 8 damage, which means they have 16 damage, while a Stalker does 10 damage versus a non-armored unit and 14 damage versus an armored unit. So the Zealot always has better damage per second, which is DPS. Their firing rate's better than a Stalker, but the problem is they're just not ranged. And ranged units are always the things that you always want most of the time. But this time, we don't have enough gas to make another Stalkers, so we made Zealots, which is still really good in this situation. And at this point, what we're going to do is, every time we have a warp in cycle, we're going to warp in units, and we're going to micro. We don't have to look back at our base, unless we have to build more pylons if we become supply capped. At this point of the game, He doesn't have any more. He doesn't have hardly any probes. He doesn't have any units, and so the game is pretty much over. And we're just waiting for the opponent to say GG and leave the game.